Welcome to Talks on Web. Today we're going to look at an autocomplete feature. So that is when you type in a word, it gives you suggestions next to it. However, we're also going to look at how Google approaches this problem. Now they do things differently to make sure that the servers aren't overloaded. Also it creates a much more efficient searching experience. I'm going to open up my DevTools, and in case you're not familiar with keyboard shortcuts, I want you to right click, go all the way to inspect. Once this opens up, click on network, and then click on Fetch XHR Requests. This will show you all the AJAX requests that are going out. Now that we have that done, I want you to type in a few words and just anything real quickly. If you type real quickly, you'll notice that some requests are being canceled out by Google. Now why is that? It's probably because when you type in, let's say, test, and then you say Laravel, and then you say I want it to be pest. Now it's probably sent in this portion of the request already. And then as soon as you type in another word, it's saying that, okay, maybe he's going a different direction. We don't need to show those other requests. It's going to be pointless that way. So a good example of this is, now if I type in L, and then it's going to say, well, are you looking for Laravel? I'm going to say, no, I'm looking for LTV license. And then it's going to say, is it in these areas? And I can say, no, I am looking for an LTV license in Canada. And now it finally, you could see the list is being completely removed and a new one is being brought in. This is what we're going to look at today. So let's start with something simple. If you look here, there's an H1 saying hello there and an input element with the idea of testing. Hopefully that didn't scare you. So what we're going to do is next is type in constant, and we'll say input element, and then we'll say document. There we go. Get element by ID, because that's what we have, and we'll pass that info in there. Next, we want to say input element. I want to do an event listener on this for the key up event. And if you're probably familiar with it, but in case you're not, this event listener gives you an event object. So we'll say give us the event object, and once you have it, I want you to call a function we're going to create in a few seconds, and that is lookup term. And inside of this, we're going to say event, which is the event object we just got, target.value. And what this does is it takes the value that is typed in here and will pass it into the function we're about to create as an argument. So let's move down. We'll say function. If I move to this one, it will kind of create some of the dumb things for me. Like I don't have to type all this stuff out. And then I'll say this is search term. Great. Now what do I do with this? Well, let's set a timeout function. And if I go to this box right here, you see in VS Code, it kind of just does that for you, some of the dumb work. And it will create the set timeout function. For those of you not familiar with it, is basically a scheduler. It's saying that I want you to run some piece of code. There you go. I know how to spell. I'm an awesome guy. All right. So after this amount of time, which could be 300 milliseconds, I want you to run this piece of code. That's what set timeout is. It's a scheduler. And in our case, what we want it to do is call the fetch function. And fetch is really sending an AJAX API request. Now if I go here, what I've done is I've Googled up this API. I'll put a link to this in the description. And we're going to hit this API. And once we do, we'll get back some result from their server. And it'll be enough for us to understand the point I'm trying to make. So let's go back to VS Code. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to say once you've hit that API, and let's say it turns into a successful response, we'll take that response, and we kind of need to convert it to JSON. Once you've done that, then I want you to take that data and then take console.log. Well, let's make a table. It's kind of easier to see. And then just show me the data. In the event, there's an error. I want you to catch that error. And then let's just do the same thing. Console, let's make it error this time, okay? And then we'll pass in the error object. Lastly, whether it was a success, okay, whether everything went well, or whether there was an error on the server, I want you to, it happens either way. I want you to call, oh, there we go, finally. Finally means that whether it was a success or whether there was an error, I want you to call this code either way. And then I will say this right here. We'll say console log. We should be done here. And let's throw in a cool guy with sunglasses. That guy looks cool. Yeah, he does. Looks like Vin Diesel with sunglasses on. All right, so we're gonna move forward, and now when I run this piece of code, what should happen is someone types into the input box, we take that and we say, okay, this event was fired. Somebody typed on their keyboard. Takes whatever they typed, passes into the function that we just created. We take that search term. Right now we're not doing anything with it because for this purpose, this is enough for us. What we do is we set a timeout, which is a scheduler, and after 300 milliseconds, this code is run. So it waits 300 milliseconds, then sends an API request, and comes back and starts writing to our console. So let's take a look at it real quick. We'll do a refresh. Let me actually minimize this and open it again. So you want to right click and go to inspect in case you didn't know, which I sincerely doubt. But let's go to the network tab and then click on fetch XHR request. Again, this shows you the AJAX request you're sending out. So now I'm going to type in TEST and notice it sends in 4 AJAX requests. Now when I click on console, I can see the response from the server in a table format. Tabular format finally says you should be done here. Now this is going to show either way whether there's an error or whether it's successful. So this could be used to clean up your UI or even any piece of code that you do have. So now let's move to the next step. Since we have this down, let's take it a step further. And outside of the search term, lookup term function, I'm going to type in let set timeout handler. Now this is a null value at the moment, and what I wanted to do is when set timeout is called, okay, it's going to say, okay, I will run this piece of code that you see here, but I'll do it after 300 milliseconds. But in the event you want to cancel this scheduled task, here's a handler. So that's what this variable is doing. Now, how do we cancel this event? We would say clear timeout. And then we would pass in the handler. Which timeout do we need to clear? Well, it's this one, the one we just saved. Next, let's do something else. What if we clear the timeout, but the AJAX request is already gone? So I want you to think about the scenario. Someone types it in, we see the key up event, we pass in the search term, and then this timeout is scheduled. After 300 milliseconds, the AJAX request is sent. But while the response hasn't come back yet, meaning that the server is doing its processing, another key is pressed. And since another key is pressed, we get the new updated search term. We pass that in here. It clears the set timeout. But even though this is cleared, JavaScript is asynchronous. This event, this API call is still in transaction. It will still fire and update whatever it needs to do. So to avoid this, what we're going to do is we're also going to cancel this AJAX request. We've canceled the set timeout, but we haven't canceled this AJAX request. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to come here inside of the set timeout. We're going to say, let's call this abort handler, and we'll give this new abort controller object. So abort controller is a class built into everyone's browser. This API, this class will give you back an object, and this object will give you access to the API, which allows you to cancel AJAX requests. Now API is a fancy way of saying you can call functions that will do complicated things for you, and that's exactly what we plan on doing. Let's create another variable, which is going to be signal. And then the reason you call it that's easy to remember. We paste the abort handler again here, and then we say, give me the signal. Now we have a signal, meaning that as soon as I signal this thing, it should stop. Right after the API, I pass this information in, this object. So now this is linked. I have access to this API. So whatever this AJAX request is being called in, I can cancel it using this handler. But the problem is, as soon as this function is done calling, I don't have access to it because it doesn't exist. Unless I come up here and I say, this is where it's declared. So this function could execute, finish executing, but I still have access to it. Now the next time, let's say an API set timeout was called. After 300 milliseconds, the AJAX request was sent. However, while this was being processed, they type in more characters. And when they type in more characters, I pass in that search term. It first goes and it says, hey, let's clear out the timer, meaning let's just cancel the scheduled task that you have. But we didn't cancel the AJAX request. So how do we cancel that AJAX request? Now that we have a handle to it, we can say abort handler, and we can say abort. But we don't want to call it right away. What we want to do is we want to say if abort handler is not null, then in that case I want you to abort it. So one, it cancels the scheduler with clear timeout. Second, it says, look, is there an AJAX request in process? If there is, I want you to go and cancel that request. And now take the new search terms. By the way, you could pass that in somewhere here. I didn't do that in this case because this particular API I found on the internet doesn't take that in. But let's say you did that. Now the new API request would go. So here's a scenario where that would actually come in handy. You type in Lara, and it thinks you're looking for Laravel, so it sends off the request, and while it's processing, thinking you're looking for Laravel, you type in Lara, the. Again, since you typed in the, and this request hasn't come back, this would go ahead and cancel that AJAX request. It would also cancel any scheduler that might not have been sent yet. And then it says, okay, he's looking for Lara the. First, cancel off the AJAX request. Second, get ready to search for Lara the after 300 milliseconds. Now that while that is waiting to be sent, I type in Lara the and I add in movie. Now again, this comes here and it'll say, since 300 milliseconds haven't passed away, it will come here and say, just cancel that. Don't even send it. It will cancel that. Then it will check, is an AJAX request in process? Of course it's not. 300 milliseconds weren't up. Nothing was sent. So this does not get fired, and instead, another schedule is set for the search term Lara the movie. And they're waiting 300 milliseconds. Now after 300 milliseconds, they send this AJAX request, Lara the movie. And before it's being processed and sent back to us, I type in Lara the movie character. Now again, since I typed that in, the key was up. It comes here and says, hey, is the timeout still happening? Is it about to fire? And the answer is no. So nothing really happens here on this particular line. Second, it comes here and says, is an AJAX request in process? In this case, it is. So we'll cancel the AJAX request and come here and set timeout for the new set of search term Lara the movie character. And again, this will go through this process. Now again, we've seen in the beginning, in the intro of this video, I kind of told you that Google does things differently. It doesn't want to show you search results that don't make sense. Like if I typed in, I'm going to come back here, Lara, it thinks you're looking for Laravel, and it sends the search terms for that. And now before those terms are actually sent back to your computer, you type in Lara the movie. This changes the context completely. You're not expecting to see Laravel related auto-completion. You want to see Lara the movie, and it shows like terms related to the movie. And then when you type in Lara the movie character, now it might even tell you whether she's alive or dead or anything related to that. So this is how Google does things differently. Hopefully in this video you got a chance to see it in a much more clear view.
Hit that subscribe button.